My name's Tony Barlow. I farm at Barlow Roots Market with my wife, Ingrid. She really runs most of the farm. I'm her assistant and help her with marketing and big projects on the farm. And we've been running the farm about 10 years, probably 5 years, pretty seriously. We've got 3 kids that help us and a fourth new baby that's not doing a whole lot just yet. We sell all our produce out of an on-farm stand called Barlow Roots Market. And yeah, it's been awesome.
So 10 years in, and I know we've emailed a lot in the past. You've been on previous podcasts. If anybody wants to look those up, you have a very, I think, realistic, financially grounded perspective into starting a farm. And it's not for everybody, but I think that I resonate a lot with your methodology of how you approach things. Now, we can start with the 10 years in. Some people think, 10 years in, that is way deep into a farm career. At that point, some farmers they've scaled tremendously. They have big staffs. They're making multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars, or maybe they've scaled acreage. They've got it locked down and it's just became this thing. Your approach, I would say, is a slower approach. And this always had me thinking of something like slow farming.
Yeah.
So when you said you're 10 years in, but the first 5 years taking it really serious, give people the recap. What are the first 5 years and what's changed in the last 5?
Sure. Yeah. So I think a lot of people start the way we started. We were growing vegetables for ourselves and we had too many veggies, mostly tomatoes as we started out. And so it was this idea of what are we going to do with the extra vegetables? We had at that time, this would have been like 2013, 2014. We had 2 young kids and I've got some fantastic pictures of that time, but we just put a sign at the end of the driveway and we set up a bunch of tomatoes on a table. And that was how we started. So when we put up the sign is when we were open, and yeah, we just sold extra tomatoes. So over time, gradually that just grew bigger and bigger. As we started to grow more vegetables for ourselves, we continued to just sell the excess. And then in about 2018, we had the realization that maybe this could be an additional source of income. And so that's when we took the next step. We bought some accounting software. We actually started keeping books, keeping track of what we were spending, what we were earning. We did that in the beginning very casually. And in the beginning, we were really just trying to earn enough money to buy the seeds for the next year, maybe make some simple enhancements with tools and equipment, but very home garden initially. And then we gradually moved into the market gardening kind of space. In those early years, I think what was so beneficial is we were learning how to grow. So we took those first 5 years. My wife and I had a garden, but not much of one. And she grew up gardening and not really having a lot of success. Those first 5 years, we had a lot of learning. We tried some methods that were a complete failure for a couple of years and ended up finding our way in 2018, finding systems that really worked. And for those first 4 or 5 years, even to this day, we picked one crop each year that we really wanted to succeed on and put a little extra focus on that to manage it. So since 2018, we've really moved ourselves forward. We've tried each year to grow more. We are landlocked here. We don't have a lot of space, but we try to really make those beds as efficient as we possibly can. And we are in a fabulous location for selling vegetables. We're just a mile from our town, from the biggest grocery store in our town. And so those first few years, I like to say we hid in plain sight. I did not do a lot of marketing because we didn't have a lot to sell. And the worst thing for me was watching someone come into the farm stand and leave empty-handed because we didn't have anything for them. And so we've just, over this slow process, we've just really grown our skills, our audience, and our finances all at the same time. And it's really paced out really well. I'll say COVID freaked us out a little bit because we had an on-farm stand. People didn't want to be in grocery stores and they found us So things got a little crazy there during that time. But yeah, so that's kind of the last 10 years. 2018 is when we really consider we started the farm.
And your wife is the primary farmer.
She
You
is. Yep.
you have a job off farm. I know you work from home, right? But
Yep.
off farm job. Remind people your goal for you is to eventually have the farm supply your part of your income, all of your income. How does that fit in with your job?
Yeah. So I do healthcare consulting, work from home. That's a family business that I found my way into 10 years ago as well. And that has, for the life of the farm, provided all the income we need at home. So that pays the bills. It has done an excellent job of financing our savings and retirement accounts. But we have been very diligent about not crossing over that money into the farm. And so we wanted the farm from the beginning to pay its own way. We started with a $2,000 investment around that 2018 timeframe and from our savings, and we haven't added anything. The farm has had to pay its own way this whole time. And the farm has been amazing. We've absolutely loved it, but I was not going to let the farm take down our personal investments. It wasn't going to be one thing or the other. And so I am naturally, and my wife has come to this as well, we're naturally fiscally conservative. We're not huge risk takers. And we've got a family with now 4 young kids at home. I wasn't willing to mortgage the future for the farm business. And so it's been important for me to maintain this business during that time. And I've got excellent flexibility. I'm the tomato guy. So I go out and do my tomatoes for 2 hours every morning. And then I come and sit down at this desk and do the work of a desk jockey. But no, it's worked really well. And I think there isn't a timeline in place for us to say, I'm going to transition to full-time doing the farm work, but it is something that we would like to do sometime. I don't dislike my work. If I did dislike my work, that would probably be different. I know that I have a mind and a personality that doesn't do well sitting still. And so I honestly, as I consider stepping away from this job, what am I going to do all winter in Wisconsin when we've got snow on the ground for 6 months? And I think that's good for my marriage too. My wife always knows when my work slows down because I've got a million ideas for her in the farm. Yeah. So I think we're in a really stable place. And while we're looking at that transition piece, no timeline in place, honestly, I think we could do it today, but things would be tight. And I don't think we're quite there yet. So
Talked a lot about this with Alec on Farm Startup.
sure.
For people that haven't listened to that, that's on the Farm Smart feed. There's scenarios where I had to do it. You may have to do it where you'd make the decision of when am I ready? And in your case, you're leaving a job that you're not being forced to leave. So the company didn't lay you off. You're not fired. The company's not shutting down, whatever. You like the job. So it's a voluntary leave. At least at this point.
Yep.
So you leave when you want. When you think about the decision to leave, being financially conservative, knowing where the farm is at, what are the check boxes you want to have checked to do that? Or what runs through your head? I think this is highly contextualized to every person. Everybody's going to be a little different. But I'm really curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah. My initial thought goes to finance right off the get-go. I think, in not necessarily speaking to our own situation, but as we've prepared for, I guess I will speak to our own situation, as we have prepared for the possibility of a transition. And honestly, my work is such that I want to be prepared that at any time I could make that jump. In consulting, work comes and goes. I've got work available now, but during the pandemic, there was nothing. Hospitals were not worried about consulting when they had patients out their ears and all of that action. I just live in a state of mind where we're preparing for the possibility that the farm could take over and pay for all of our expenses. And so the first thing we did, honestly, was we just started an emergency fund. For me, that is 1 year of our expenses. And I guess one step further back, and this is getting a little like personal finance land, but you have to figure out how much money you spend each year. I am amazed at how many people I talk to in casual situations when I bring up the awkward topic of money and they get a little squirrely, but how many people don't even know how much money they spend each year or each month? If you're going to be making any big decisions about where your money is coming from, what you're earning, you need to know how much you're spending. And without that number, it's like there's no way to even make a plan. And so figuring out what you're spending each month, it's probably good to look at that spending and say, if we had to, we could drop 10,000 of that if we wanted to cancel something. Figure out how much you spend and then figure out how low you could go realistically, and be realistic, because without realistic numbers, there's no point in doing the exercise. And then really just start saving and putting away money. We live in the world we're in, where I'm earning, and we're looking forward to this transition. It's where we have not changed our lifestyle based on how much money we have coming in. Every penny of that excess money has gone to, whether we use a high yield savings account for our emergency fund, but we've also stockpiled money in 401ks and IRAs and things like that. Because I'm 43 right now. I don't know how long I want to work, but let's say I wanted to work till I'm 60. That's 17 more years where if the farm became our sole source of income, and right now crunching the numbers, the farm makes about a little more than half of what we spend each year. And so if we're going to make that transition
after all expenses.
Correct. Yes. So our profit at the end of the year last year was about half of what we spend each year. And so there's a gap to make up there. And you're either going to have to you're either going to have to get a part-time job and earn some more money. You're going to have to cut what you're spending, or you're going to have to start dipping into some of that savings pot. And so we've built our long-term financial plan so that we have a pot of money that we can draw from over time to fill in that gap. And I think for most people, probably as you make that transition, it's like there's never going to be a perfect time, but you better make sure you've got some of this in place and you've got a plan in place for how you're going to manage that. And in most cases, it's probably not going to be one thing or the other. It's not going to be just spending less or just earning more or just taking from savings. It's going to need to be probably all three of those things in one shape or form.
Yeah. I was thinking about the notes in advance around, this is an approach to farming or starting a business that resonates with me. It's
Sure.
similar to what I did. I had a lot of savings when I left the finance world, so I didn't have to turn on business income instantly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think it's a ideal approach. Some naysayers may say, well, you don't have the pressure to perform right away. And yeah, maybe true, but if you're motivated, you're going to want to do it anyway, because there's also the pressure to not lose savings.
Yeah.
And it's the difference between, I once heard it explained like this: if I put a 2x4 between 200-story buildings and told you to walk across without a safety net, everybody listening to this would probably say no and be extremely nervous. If I lay it on a pavement and say walk across, everybody's doing it because the risk is a million times greater. Life.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the difference lies in all this. Sure, you can do this needing it to work. And some people can handle that, some people can't. I think that probably is very personal. Your stress makeup, your familial dynamic, everybody has to be on board if you're a spouse and everything. Your living situation has to be dialed in. You're not going to be a big spender with a bunch of debt. Trying to do
Mm-hmm.
that, you're probably pretty frugal, tight with debt. Everybody's on board. And if you go the route this way, it's okay. I don't have to be necessarily concerned with how much am I making this month. I can be concerned about what's the best decision for the business today to take the business where it needs to go, which sometimes doesn't align with I need
Right.
$500 to get to break
Yeah.
even this month.
Yeah.
So I may have to forego some plan for the future because I need the money now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a situation I think people can find themselves in. So having that emergency fund takes the pressure off. And I've talked about this in podcasts and things of when you start a business, so many people focus on all my farm stuff is going to cost X dollars. What about your living costs? If
Right.
you are just jumping in, right? But
Yeah.
those aren't going to suddenly become zero
Right.
if you quit
Yeah.
your job and you jump over. So you've taken this approach of, hey, build up an emergency fund. You get the buffer. You bring the 2x4 closer to ground level.
Yeah.
There's less risk there. How does this approach go into business growth? If you're not dependent upon the business to increase growth by X each year, do you think you make different decisions?
I think it goes back to absolutely what you said. People are motivated by different things. I find money motivates me, but also winning motivates me. I want the business to succeed because that's what business is supposed to do. And so without that growth, it just doesn't, it's just not a good feeling year if we're not growing year over year. And so I think that the financial side is nice, but I don't think that needs to be the biggest driver as far as like motivating you to be successful. If you're growing year over year and finding success, like we've got a unique mission statement here. We homeschool, we homestead, I work from home. And so a big part of what we wanted to do here is meet more people. We meet a lot of people. So that is a goal that we can check off the list. But I think you're right. It's like, what motivates you? And whether we need this income or not, I still want to be successful and I still want to see us improve every year. And that's just something, I think that's just something that's built into me personally in all things I do. But yeah, if that makes sense.
It does. Do you think you're just the type of person you couldn't just dive in? If you went back to 2018 when you started your farm, you're just not the person who would quit their job and start a farm and see how it goes? Is that internal to who you are, the Tony-ness of you?
I think I have dove into a lot of things, but nothing with the risk of saying this farm, which last year produced in 2018, it's like this farm last year that made us $5,000 now needs to figure out a way to keep us alive for the next year. So I will always put in place safety measures as best I can. And we're extremely blessed. I mean, life goes well we've played our cards correctly through this life that I've got the consulting business. I've gotten the work. If all of that went away, we absolutely would figure out a way to make that work. Or I'd go drive a school bus or deliver mail in the afternoons or who knows what. So we would figure out a way to make that work. And I'll just say this, one of the biggest concerns for me right now in this space of market gardening is watching my farmer friends, even in my own area, drop out, hang things up, sell the greenhouses, and quit farming. And I think what our story says is that there's a better way than jumping in and putting all this immense amount of pressure on yourself to not only learn how to grow vegetables, which, let's be honest, isn't easy. But it's like you cannot read a book or go to an online course and learn everything on how to grow vegetables. You just absolutely cannot. I drive 5 miles in any direction, and the methods of growing are going to be different. And so to expect that you're going to get that from a book or an online course is crazy. The foundation is wonderful. It's amazing, but it's so much pressure. And so you take the pressure of the weather when you're farming, seed germination, like a million things. And then you want to add intense amounts of debt and financial pressure onto yourself as well. And then you've got a family at home you're trying to feed. But it just seems crazy to me that we would go to that to try that. And that's totally my mindset. But having the safety net, having all of this in place, 100% gives you a better chance to succeed in the long term. We're not doing this to farm for 2 years and then go back to working at. Let's find a way that's sustainable and there's so much of this, like with just being realistic about your expectations. How you're not going to jump in year one and make 6 figures. Maybe someone did. I don't know.
Robin, I think there is a lot of want leading people into farming. I want this lifestyle. I want this to work. They don't, like you said, maybe set proper expectations. And I was just looking at some numbers here, like thinking about this, trying to compare. I'm trying to think how many market farms are in the US, right? Say under 10,000. So we just had the Summer Olympics. There was 10,700 people in the Olympics. So that's the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
In terms of athletes in the world for those events. That's about how many farms there are. So if you look at it the same way, like that distills down into, okay, there's the cream of the crop of people who can actually do this. It's just not a lot of people that can. And I think the other assumption is like, this is easy. I have the right to be able to do it because I think growing food is a human right, which I get, but it's not necessarily growing food for a business. And they make a lot of big errors, which involve lack of foresight, probably unrealistic expectations of how long it takes to grow. If you go to your example there, $5,000 or whatever you said in 2017, and you're going to go full time in 2018, and now you need to be making this up. That needs to be 90. Okay, you have to go whatever that is, 15 or 16 times the growth in 1 year. How does that actually happen? Is there a path to that? And I'm thinking, as I read the email you sent, thinking about past conversations in this one, I wonder if the better path, maybe more, the path that may have the higher chance of success, I don't want to say better, the path that may have the higher chance of success is you have a family unit. Mm-hmm. One of them wants to farm. The other person's responsibility and duty in this is, what can I do to succeed? So it's like the yin and yang, the farming venture and whatever this other person does sticks together. And that's how our family unit earns income. Or we can't just look at the farm.
Yeah.
But can we bolt something on? And most people have some sort of skill so they can do something on the side. Yeah. Some jobs pay more than others. There's also the other jobs, like you said, drive a bus or work at Starbucks, those types of things. And maybe that's not taken into account enough of, I'll start the farm, but I also need to make sure you're doing this. Maybe that's the career like you have. Your wife wants to start the farm. All right, Tony, we need you to keep in the healthcare, keep that train going down the tracks as long as we possibly can so I can get going here.
Yeah.
And that additional income that's relatively stable versus an entrepreneurial venture depressurizes things and enables the business owner who has so much to worry about and learn to just learn and build the business instead of squeezing dollars out of every action.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And And like I said, there's not a perfect solution to this. And but I love how you say the family unit, because I read a great book. I'm not even going to remember the name of it, but it talked a lot about family teams and how to look at your family like you're a family team. And we absolutely do that with our farm. I've got a 14-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 10-year-old, and they are bought in on the farm. And I think we look at also the family unit and look at the strength of a marriage. And I know I wrote in my notes, it's maybe you and your partner don't actually work well together. Maybe having both of you there, maybe if you can't cook a meal together without arguing, trying to start a business together is going to be a challenge. And I think as far as like creating this strong family unit and creating a strong business, I think market gardening and we do a lot of homesteading too, are both things that can have the potential to strengthen the family in so many ways. And that's something I absolutely love about it. It starts with the food, obviously being able to grow your own organic veggies. We milk dairy goats. We raise our own pork. We have chickens that lay eggs. And having all of that stuff in place to feed our children, where we know we're literally growing the food, we know where it comes from, I think is huge. I'd like to think my kids, we've helped them tremendously with learning about entrepreneurship. Each month, I take home a profit and loss. We look at that together. We talk about how did the month go? What did we spend? What did we earn? How could we change? And so I think building a family legacy and building a family team, if my kids decide not to market garden, the likelihood is that they probably won't. They're still going to have skills that they've learned, whether it's just, it doesn't even need to be how to harvest carrots. It's like, how do you for 40 minutes focus on doing one task and harvest carrots? It's like, that is a lesson in itself. It doesn't have to necessarily be the actual task being done. And so I think all this is coming back to what you said. You jump in, if both partners jump into a business like market gardening with all the risk, and they also have a tremendous amount of financial risk, that has a huge potential to not only break down the business, but also break down a family. We know that financial burden is a huge stressor on marriages. And so all that being said, the risks for me are not just financial as far as how I wanted to start my market gardening business. Everything is included in that as well. One more thing along these lines is it's like our customer base. We know farmers who have CSAs. We have an on-farm stand. Our customers have grown to depend on us for organic, locally grown vegetables. If we burn ourselves out, if we become too financially dependent on the risk in the farm and we have to shut our doors, all those people need to find different places to buy good food as well. So I just think there's balancing the risk and the reward in this space is tremendous. And the world that we live in, and it's not just market gardening, but so many things get touted and made. There's just this, you said it, there's just this impression that market gardening, you get your hands in the soil, you're working outside, you leave your desk job, and it's all wonderful. There's a lot of wonderful things. We love it, but it is hard work and it is challenging. And the financial reality of selling a bag of lettuce for $5, how many bags of lettuce to sell to feed a family? So it's just, like you said, realistic expectations in all of this.
Yeah, whether you're working on a farm or putting tops on bottles in a factory, if you're behind on payments of something in your life, you hate both jobs.
Yeah.
You're just stressed about life.
Yep.
You can't, it's hard to play from behind in anything in life.
Yep.
Where you feel like you're catching up or you're treading water. So you and I are at a very similar point in life. We're about the same age, mid-40s. You have 4 kids. I have 3 kids. We're both married. We have a different approach if we're going to do a business than somebody who's in their 20s and has the
Absolutely.
opportunity to live at home, live with a roommate, live in
Yep.
an apartment. They're single or just dating somebody. There's a lot less repercussions. And maybe you have to look at your stage of life of, if I go down this path, what goes wrong?
Yep.
Maybe in the 20s, you want to try something and you lose some startup capital. That's your real world MBA.
Yep.
You're not getting
Absolutely.
divorced because you weren't married in the first place. There's no kids to feed. You don't have kids and you're
Yep.
already living with mom and dad,
Yep.
which I think is great. I wish more people in their 20s would do that. I definitely didn't do that. And I wish I had tried something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that.
But as you move on in life, it comes down to a lot of what you're saying. What you weren't willing to risk it. So it's, would you trade your business for your marriage?
Mm-hmm.
Would you trade your business for not being present? Because I don't think a business has to fail to let you down in life. If
Mm-hmm.
it's average performing or slightly underperforming, that I think
Mm-hmm.
is enough of a track
Yeah.
to dip your mood down, where when you're not working, you don't have that lust of life because you
Mm-hmm.
have, it's like the nerve in your back that's pinching you. It's just always there. I think
Yeah.
everybody would come from a much better place outside of work if work is humming. You're ahead,
Yeah.
things are great, you feel great outside of work.
Yeah.
And starting a business will inevitably be average or probably below average in the beginning.
Yeah.
So having one income all come from entrepreneurship on a new
Mm-hmm.
business
Mm-hmm.
in a family unit, I think is really tough.
Yeah.
Balance that out with a stable income, even if it's small or part-time. It's just that much more of a baseline now you're working from. We now no
Yeah.
longer have to earn $2,000 a month. You make 1,000. Now I just have to get 1,000.
Yeah.
Much
Yeah.
more approachable. And it probably shouldn't be another business. My wife just started a business recently. So we both run a business and hers is doing well, but I see the lifestyle of 2 entrepreneurs doing
Yeah.
2 different businesses.
Yeah.
And that is pretty chaotic. Fortunately, I'm on the stable route
Stabilized.
now.
Yep.
But yeah, so what I would not suggest, I'll start a business too. I don't think
Yeah.
that approach is the one to go down either for people. Because when you look at your job, the money you pull in, is it, or maybe I should ask you, do you feel pressure to, or want or pull to be full time on the farm and to get out of that job? I know you said you don't hate the job, but do you feel that what you typed up in here of, hey, a freedom of entrepreneurship, both be working together, maybe we like that, maybe we don't.
Yeah.
But do you feel that pull at all?
Yeah. I think I would speak similarly to a lot of people who are considering transition, to say it like varies day to day, hour to hour, month to month. It's just that feeling. There are definitely days where it's, I wish I was out there. I wish I was outside. I wish I wasn't stuck in front of a screen. But at least at this point, I still get a lot of engagement and a lot of mental exercise from doing my own work at my desk. And I probably put 2 to 4 hours a day into work in the garden, and then probably 6, 7 hours. I don't know if the math works out on that. I'm finding time to do both. We do a little work on Saturday. And I will say this too. We not only we're conservative financially, but we're also conservative with our time. And so we have built our business so that even my wife, who this is her full-time summer job, she only works almost every day. She only works in the morning. And so she's over here usually about 7:30 or 8. And by lunchtime, most days, our garden work is done. And that is to protect, that is again for the family unit. She didn't want to feel that mom guilt of spending a full day at the farm while the kids are all at home doing their own thing. And so she has protected those afternoons for her time with the kids. And that's another way I think we've allowed this to find a sustainable path is as parents and entrepreneurs, it's like there's so many things you're juggling. How do you keep all the balls in the air? And it's really just about protecting your time. But there will be a day where I look forward to being full time on the farm, and I will just I've got a newsletter going. I just need to find other ways to engage mentally, and I think we'll find that. But if I'm honest, from a financial perspective, we maybe talked about this last time, but there's a term, financial independence. I want to feel financially independent mathematically. I don't want to feel it. I want to be mathematically financially independent before we take that leap. And so in my mind, that means we can make this work. We can make this happen. We will be fine when we're 55 and we don't want to work anymore. Our kids are fine. We've got a little college saved up for them. And so that's my goal. We're really close to being there right now. And I think that is the ultimate conservative, fiscally conservative mindset. We cannot fail, barring a huge collapse of society, in which case everyone fails. So
do you think that you can say this because you've, in your words, played your financial cards right for the past 20 years?
Yeah, I think when we were first married, I was working as a broadcast meteorologist. And so people think you're on TV, you must be just raking it in. It was not at all the case. So but it was during that time that we learned to manage our money and to be fiscally responsible, to not overspend. And it's only been probably the last 4 or 5 years that we've been able to stockpile money into investments. And that took some time and education. We are completely on our own as far as managing our finances, which I think is important. But without that knowledge and without having that money, I'd be chained to this desk forever with no dream of stepping away. And it's partially about what you make. That's important. But in my mind, it's about what you spend. And that also goes to what you spend on the farm. I see people thinking that now they have a business and reinvest everything they make back into the business and have every tool under the sun and 10 different high tunnels or caterpillar tunnels or whatever. And it's just I will just say from experience, there is more comfort in knowing you're able to put a little money away in the bank each year from your business, and the bells and whistles and the equipment come along with it. We have bought over time, year over year. It's every year we're like, let's invest in this year. We bought a Jang a couple years ago. Prior to that, everything was with an Earthway, and it worked. We bought a paper pot. We bought a paper pot planter used from my sister-in-law. But all these things, you have to know how to be fiscally responsible to be a good entrepreneur, in my mind, at least in the early years of being an entrepreneur. And to grow business, you have to know how to spend your business's money too. And I think both those things are super important. So those are things that we learned prior to starting this business that I think have helped shape this business and make it successful.
I think the expense thing is huge because if you're a big spender outside of business, you're probably one inside of business as well.
Yep.
I don't think that distinction, neither credit card's going to really feel different in your hand.
No.
So somebody who is 30, they worked in their 20s, they did what a lot of 20-year-olds do, bounce around, not so financially responsible, not wrecks. They don't have massive debt, but they just didn't save a lot. They do what a lot of 20-year-olds do. Got a little bit of savings saved up, no debt. and they want to approach farming under the Barlow method. Some people who can't, and this is where I was coming from in the previous question of your 20 years of smart financial decision. If you're 30 and you're starting, if you call that time zero when you want to take this on, if you don't have massive earning power, if you have expenses and you start at the farm and one person works. So we go that part of this.
Yep.
There's not a lot of surplus to set aside to build that fund. Is it then just stasis, try and grow, save what you can, cut expenses that you can, and just grow the business as you can and really lean on that business to grow family unit income that way? Like, how would somebody who's younger without a huge earning power job start to build that safety buffer without a 10-year plan? Hey, I don't want to do it when I'm 40. I can wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait a decade.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's every year you get older, you get closer to the time when you're not going to be able to work and earn anymore. And so I even look at that now. I do have a tendency to look at the worst case scenario just to know it's out there. I still have, if we lost all of our money today, I still have all of my 50s to earn money. When you're 30, you've got, well, I should say, I still have a lot of my 40s and all my 50s. When you're 30, you have an even bigger window of time. So I think the biggest thing when I talk to young people about finance, whether it's someone at church I've met or a friend in the homeschool community, it's because that's our community of people. My biggest thing is just really managing lifestyle creep at home. And so that's really this, and even with a small income, it can exist. You just end up spending all your money every year. It's every year you're earning a little bit more, and somehow at the end of the year, you're at the same place. And remember what I would say to a person who's 30 is it's like, what's the Dave Ramsey thing? You're going to be in rice and beans. You're eating rice and beans. You're living cheap. You're driving used cars. And then you just stay there. You're going to improve your life a little bit as you start to earn more money. But the first year you see a nice bump in what you're earning. Maybe the farm doesn't need a brand new pickup truck. And you mentioned no debt. It's before I started any business, I would eliminate debt as best I can. Our plan was really, we took time and we learned how to grow vegetables. So I would tell a person who's 30, it's like, why don't you take 3 years, both of you keep working and start a garden and plant a little bit of everything and see what you're able to grow, see how successful you are, see if you even like growing vegetables, sell them to your friends and family, your neighbors. And then on year 3 or 4, maybe one of you goes to part-time and you say, okay, we're going to try to put a little more money into this. We're going to try to take a little risk with this and give up some income to try and see if the farm can replace that income, and just do that slow and steady over time. And if you're 30 and you get to 40 and you're like, we built this business pretty well, but it's not working and we're not sure how we're going to make it long term. It's then at 40, you start over and you go back to work and you've got plenty of time to earn some money to live on when you want to retire. So it's like, it takes all the exciting adrenaline out of entrepreneurship, but in my mind,
yeah, here's the pitch.
Yeah.
You can start your farm with a bigger safety buffer, more experience, a more aligned relationship financially, but you got to wait 2 days. Or you can start today and how it goes. And I think a lot of people are like, 900 days, that's like almost a presidential term. That's almost like college. It's high school.
Yeah.
But it really is. This will air in December-ish 2024. And I'm thinking say you had this idea, I'm going to start farming in 2025. It's almost as though let's just push that back, slide that back to 2026 at the
Yeah.
earliest. You use 2025 to do so much of what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
Do we even know what we spend? Because that's the
Yeah.
first question. If you want to start a farm right now and you can't answer the question of how much do you spend each month to support your lifestyle, you probably shouldn't start the farm. That should be like a first telltale. That's a weed out question right there.
Yeah.
And then you use the next year to understand your finances, pay down debt, practice growing. Because the great thing about farming is relative to other businesses, it's a cheap to get into, meaning you can practice if you have some land for
Yeah.
little to nothing. Don't tell me
Yeah.
seeds are expensive. They cost zero
Yeah.
compared to starting whatever, an
Yeah.
iPhone business.
Yeah.
So you can practice growing, you can get the experience. You, if you have a partner, can come up with a plan of how would this look? Does one of us need to get a job? Does one of us need to try and skill up in our
Yeah.
current job, maybe get a better position in our current job? Does one of us need to change jobs?
Yep.
What do I think of my job? Do I want to work part-time? Will they let me go part-time if I'm full-time? Could I maybe work full-time, but I'm remote? And you use a year to just do all this non-sexy stuff that doesn't involve buying anything from people like me
Yeah.
or any of the companies out there, but it is all setting the table to take the next step with really no downside except
Right.
you had to wait.
Yep.
Which, in this society of TikTok, it's like on to
I
the
know.
next thing, on to the next thing, on to the
Yeah.
next thing, or Snapchat.
Yeah.
Waiting a year is, I feel like now, as like somebody who used to have to wait 4 years for high school to be over, it just seems
Mhm.
so far out there. But that's the approach, I think. If you are nervous or want to do it, or you don't have some unfair advantage of taking over an already operating farm,
Yeah.
something like that, how are you going to get X dollars of income that you need to survive in year one? It can't just be a hope and a prayer.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. Immediate gratification is the world we live in, and there's so much. I won't say so much. There's some good that comes from the digital world, but there's a lot of not good, and this whole immediate gratification, instant success expectation is just brutal to people. And so the other thing I'll say is that as we have planned this transition, I'm actually in process on it now. I've titled the document Barlow Roots 2.0 Business Plan for the Future. So we are going through, we did a rough business plan when we started in 2018. We're rebuilding the business plan as if I was full-time on the farm. And what does that look like and what needs to happen? One of the big ahas this year is we're selling a lot of product from vendors. And it's been a fantastic way for us to support our friends and family who grow or who create soaps, candles, meat chickens, things like that. If we really wanted to transition to full-time on the farm, transition me, there might be a few of those things that maybe we could do on the farm. And looking at where else could we earn money? Where are we paying a vendor to produce something where maybe we as a family could produce that thing? Right now, there's not time. It's easier, and it just makes sense for us to purchase those things in a vendor relationship. We currently pay a couple people to work on the farm. And so if I were to come work full time, we'd potentially eliminate some of those expenses. And then it goes in, my idea brain loves to go into what else could there be? So we've got a great property. Could we do some short-term rentals on our property? Could we do some small events on our property? All of those things right now We just don't have the energy to complete because I'm doing the desk job. My wife Ingrid's full-time running the farm. We've got the kids, we've got everything. But if I had that available time, what else could there be that we could do to earn money out of this place? And so the one hiccup for me right now, speaking vulnerably and honestly, is there are some startup expenses in some of the things we want to do. If I were to want to build a few tiny houses to do some short-term rentals, some farm stays, it's going to take some capital investment to pay for that. And what bucket does that money come from? And so right now I'm creatively looking for opportunities to fund some of that stuff, or honestly to start a different fund where we start putting away, maybe it's $1,000 a month that we could put into this bucket and say, okay, once we've got 14,000 in that bucket, that's enough money to start building a tiny house, and then we take off from there. And so we're not going to take out a loan. And so where does the money come from? And so that's where we're at in the whole transition process right now. But writing things down and making a plan and just really figuring out where the money's going to come from and where else we could earn money, I think has been a really good exercise for us.
Because the reality is, if you full-time farmed tomorrow, so healthcare consulting gone.
Yep.
The business as it is would leave a gap in your income.
Yep.
So part of this, the 2.0 plan, is to get Tony on the farm. We need to get the farm to add this much incremental income or other tangential businesses or funding opportunities. What are all the ways we could do that?
Yep.
And then you're just boiling down how much does each one cost, which one's the most doable with our energy, which one has the best chances of working, which one do we do first, that type of thing. Because that I think is another approach that often gets lost of, I'll just farm. What, like you said, what is how many bags of salad mix do you need to do to pay that?
Yeah.
And if you're already maxed out on that, what else has to happen? What's changing in the business? You can't just rely on cost reduction to get you there. It's likely going to have to be income expansion, which means in the farm case, it's more customers, which is more CSA customers, or add a CSA or another farmer's market. And all those things are time, more things to grow,
more pressure,
more to manage, more pressure. So how do you get there? So it sounds like you guys have to double income to get you there.
Yeah. And so some of that is mortgage is a part of that. We're really close to paying off our house. And so that would be a huge chunk we'd be able to eliminate. There is some stuff that would bring that expense down pretty naturally. And we live pretty comfortable, but it's almost becoming a game now with my wife and I. It's how we're eating out of the freezer more. We already live pretty cheap, but I should say frugal. I'm not supposed to say cheap, but where else can we make cuts? And so I think that was last year. Last year we were about half. I think this year we'll probably add another 10,000 to what we bring home from the farm. And so we're honestly getting really close. And like I said, I've got an emergency fund and then we've got some money set aside. So we've got a really nice little buffer that I'm sure, like you said, if it quit today, we'd make it work. So, yeah.
Everybody, I think, in the finance world has a little bit of a different take on this. For somebody who brings home 100 units of money, how would you recommend they divide that up? This is after tax.
100 units of money after tax. In a perfect world, I think at a minimum, for me, it's 30% savings. For the last 4 years, we've been like probably 60% savings, which has allowed us to get to this point. And I will say it is amazing what you can do in 5 years with discipline and good saving. Like 5 to 10 years, people can completely change their financial picture. It's just been astonishing to me. I know this from your finance background. It's like the power of compound interest is just incredible. But you got to start somewhere. And like we were talking about the 20 or 30-year-old, if I could go back in time and put away a little more money then than we did, we'd be even better off. But so I would say 30% minimum goes to savings, but the more savings you can do, the better. At least if you're in a part of life where savings is important. And then we donate a fair amount as well. And and then the rest goes to life, living, eating, mortgage, rent, all that stuff.
Did you go from 30%, do you think, up to around 60?
Um,
I'm curious what you would have cut to, like, how do you cut to go that high?
It was honestly, a lot of it was just additional earning. And so this business has not been stable at all. We've had some tremendous years that have been awesome. And so it just goes up and down pretty radically. But we have stayed pretty steady with our spending for a lot of years. And that's been a goal. It's every month we're looking at what are we spending, and we try to end up at a good point at the end of the year. So if we have a month, property taxes, like there's all these things as adulting, there's all these things that are just additional money that you don't expect. But it's not just groceries and rent and all these things that are planned, but then it's okay, the brakes went out on the car. Now we've got $2,000 in property expenses this month. And so we just try to balance that out. If in June I have to pay property taxes and there's an additional $2,000 expenses, then in July and August, it's okay, where are we going to cut back so that at the end of the year, we're where we need to be. But again, it's just discipline in spending and saving and managing your money. Money is a tool and it's important in this world. But I have found the greatest freedom in my life by having stability and freedom from needing to constantly worry about it. And so we found that by just being disciplined and saving money. So we're not living paycheck to paycheck. We're not in fear of the next car accident or emergency that's going to send us into bankruptcy. And that's what allows me to sleep at night, is having that stability.
Everyone in life, at least in the US, has spending categories: mortgage, vehicle, insurance, utilities, food, luxury or discretionary items. Where do you think people need the most help being disciplined? Where do they get in trouble? What category?
I think cars is a huge one. I think I don't want people to dislike me here. But
yeah, it's true though. Like, the stats don't, I think you're right. It's
cars, eating out, trips. Yeah. You go out to eat. I'm shocked at how much it costs for even my wife and I to eat out. If we go to a semi-nice place, it's like $50 for a meal for two people. And it's $60, $70 when we take the kids. And we eat out maybe once a month. Groceries are way down. I see what my friends pay for protein at the grocery, and it just makes me sick. But just so, yeah, I love this life we live. Homesteading, it's definitely not for everyone, but it saves our grocery bill tremendously. But yeah, eating out, cars, concerts, there's a happy medium for sure in finding joy in life and using your money wisely. But if you're at a place where you're living paycheck to paycheck, taking a close look at where you're spending and where you could eat a few more meals at home, cut out I drive by Starbucks in the morning and it's from like 7 to 10 a.m. There's a 14-car line in our Starbucks. So it's all the same stuff. It is not hard to cut spending. It's really not that hard. It just takes discipline and a change in your lifestyle. And we love it. I love eating at home. I know what I'm eating. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think this can be misconstrued as you're stripping all the joy out of my life here, Tony. And I don't think anybody's saying that, because there obviously is room, but you can't have the Starbucks and the Jamba Juice and eat out and go to dinner and then go to the baseball game the same day. There
Yeah.
has to be a little bit of a limit here.
Yeah.
And I think with so much stuff now, the costs, you own Costco, everything's $9 to $19. You can 20
Yeah.
yourself to $500 easy.
Yeah.
So thinking about all this, maybe a good baseline is if you want a farm, you have some income, you're thinking about it, or even if you already are farming and somebody in the household is working, can you get to that 30% savings? Can you
Yeah.
start there? Can
Yeah.
you, what's the first step in all this? Can I audit my credit card statement and say, what could we not do next month? I think people realize how hard it is to earn a pre-tax or post-tax dollar.
Absolutely.
You can
Yeah.
spend money so,
Especially depending on where you live. It's just wild. Yeah.
yeah. And you might make $50 an hour, but depending on your tax bracket, maybe, I don't know, 28 of that or
Mm-hmm.
something like that makes it to your bank account.
Yeah.
And you think this thing only costs $20, that's an hour of your time.
Yeah.
And that's hard to get back.
Yeah. And I would say from a farming perspective, looking at units of sale, it's how much do you have to sell to earn a tool? And setting some of these baselines for yourself, some goal, maybe you have some goals and stretch goals of saying, okay, last year we made X. This year, a tool, let's say, I'm trying to think of a tool. Let's say a paper pot planner would make my life so much easier. If I can earn 10K more this year than last year, I'm going to reward myself with that tool, which will make life easier for the next year. But setting out those markers for yourself so that you stay within your own means as far as what you're spending on the farm is super important, because just like you said, taxes are brutal. Expenses in farming can be really challenging, but they also can be next to nothing. That's what I was talking on X with a fellow farmer, and he was lamenting that he just wasn't able to cover expenses. And so I said, I'd love to walk through this with you. Like, where's your money going? How much are you earning? And all this stuff. And yeah, it's just amazing how much money you can spend. But like you said, seeds are cheap. And if you have seeds and a shovel, and you can make this work. And for us, it's gamified. I absolutely love finding ways to save money on our farm. First couple of years, we had to buy compost. That was our biggest expense, buying compost. Today, in the fall, we've partnered with a guy who does lawn cleanups. So he dumps the leaves and the grass clippings that he pulls off of people's lawns in town into a pile on our farm. Over the winter, I'd turn it. Over the summer, I'd turn it, and we have more compost than we could ever use. And that saves us our biggest expense on the farm from our first few years. And you can do this work so cheap, frugal, and it just ends up improving your bottom line if you can just save money. It's so important.
Yeah, the point of how many bags, or I need to turn over 5 beds of Salanova to pay this tool off.
Yeah. Yes.
Some sort of visualization of, okay, that's for 45 days times 5. It's a year in the ground.
Yep.
Bed to get that back. And maybe it's worth it. Maybe it isn't. And I think you're right. Once you have the base level of stuff, you can make it work. And it's not always things that enhance income. A lot of times it is process.
Yep.
It's
100%.
strategy.
Yep.
It's marketing or outreach.
A good plan.
Yeah. Yeah. People want to spend their way to success. I think a lot of times because it's easy. I bought this thing or this course or this whatever. And now that shows I've done it, and okay, I'm better now. Or you haven't done anything on it all.
Yeah. I say that all the time with the tools we buy. It's like, And some tools have been tremendous. Like the paper pot planter has been a life-changing tool for our farm. It saves so much time. It improves germination. The Jang has been a tremendous time saver. But there's other tools we have where it's okay, that still takes me time. It still takes me effort. And it does make things a little bit easier, but it still takes time or skill. And so there's always a learning curve with all this stuff too. And with all the tools, you're not going to be an overnight success with every tool, but they do help. But you just have to be at the right point and place in your farming experience to make them work. So
Do you think you guys could have accelerated growth without dialing up spending? Should you have wanted to go that route?
I think absolutely we could have accelerated. We were living in a world where we weren't completely dependent on that money. It was totally a side hustle. I think we talked in the last podcast, the first, even this year potentially, but the last 5 years, we've taken everything extra we've earned on the farm. So all of our profit, essentially, I shouldn't say all of it. We always leave a little in the bank for next year's seeds, but we've taken a big chunk of that profit and invested it for our kids into Roth IRAs. So at the end of the year, we pay them. We just set up payroll for 2 months and we pay them out a lump sum. And I put that immediately into a Roth IRA for them. And we were living in a blessed position where I had enough income to support our family. The farm was funding the kids' future funds. And honestly, my wife was raising 3 kids and homeschooling, and she had her own part-time job as well, doing some teaching for our homeschool co-op. And we just grew at a really nice pace and rate. If we wanted to have accelerated that, we could have. I love to remind people that there's so much skill involved in growing vegetables, skill, and I would say even like intuition that comes with growing vegetables that you just can't get overnight. And so I think it's really worked out perfectly, but in an imperfect world where we would have had to make it work, I think we could have put the paddle down a little bit more and earned a little more for sure.
What if it was just you? Could you have done both? And your wife just took care of the kids,
Yeah.
that type of thing, and you ran the farm, you did your job. Maybe you dialed back your current job.
Yeah.
Could you have handled that? Financially, maybe it doesn't change, but
Right.
the stress of doing both?
I would not have enjoyed that. It like I said, it was very much a side hustle that we were trying to see if it could prove itself. Life has calmed down a little bit so that as far as my consulting work, so that we are considering the transition piece. But prior to that, my work at this desk was pretty intense. I would have had to significantly scale that back. I would have had to say no to work, and I would have had to say no to earning potential to do the farm work, which would have earned many percentage points less than what I was doing here. And so I think it would have been an unwise financial decision for us at that time. And honestly, like my wife is one of the hardest working people I know. I can't match her work ethic. I've come a long way, but she just crushes it out there and she does it so well. So I give her a ton of credit for being able to do that. And I just, like I said, I help where needed and handle the tomatoes. So
Yeah, if you do logic math, it's stuff like proofs, if A, then B. And I'm hearing this and I wonder now, if a family of 2 wants to start a farm, then there must be 2 jobs, of which the farm is one, but one person cannot have 2 jobs. You think about some of these scenarios. Partner A, I'm going to work part-time. I'm going to start a farm. They have 2 jobs.
yeah,
Partner B, let's say, doesn't have a job. Partner A is going through everything you did. Do I, forever playing the game, how do I hedge my income?
yeah,
How do I grow the farm? I'm splitting time between both. You can't ever really turn up the volume on either because you're
Mhm.
at either.
Yeah.
You're limited, you're throttling yourself back. So you need the stability from the part-time job or the off-farm job, I should say.
Yeah.
But the off-farm job needs to shift to person B.
Sure. Yeah.
So then they can just go with that.
Yeah.
You compartmentalize your focus, your stress on your startup.
Yeah.
They work there. If person A is straddling both, or if there's even a third job in here, partner B's got that. It's how do you do both? Because that just, I don't know. I empathize. I feel for the people that try and do that or have to do that because I can see how hard it is, especially if it's rigid job. If you have to
Yeah.
show up from, you have hard hours, 9 to 4, and
Yeah.
I gotta be there. Then that means by default, I can only work on my side hustle outside those hours,
Yeah.
which is night a lot of the year and cold.
Yeah.
So it's hard to make progress there where you're working from home. So you maybe have a little more flexible to shift things
Yeah.
around. That's at least one advantage. Or if you're contract or some sort,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can push things. But I think that is also tough. You're getting you're getting the off farm income, but is there a gain?
Right.
You have half an off farm job, half an entrepreneurial effort. Is that greater than one entrepreneurial effort? Or is that greater
Yeah.
than one off farm job? And I don't know.
It, yeah. Yeah. No, I don't either. I think for a single person who's trying to make this go, I think a part-time job and trying to start farming probably makes sense. I also think about someone who works seasonally in a full-time job, like a teacher, for instance, or someone who works in the school district where you've got summers off. And if you had, let's say you could start seeds while you're still teaching in May and get seeds in the ground late May and start harvesting in June, July, and August. I think that'd be a really cool way to start that type of business. Is that seasonal work. The other thing I was going to mention, Diego, that I did not include in the path to making this work would be if someone like our hypothetical 30-year-old could also go work for another farm and a large market garden farm as well, and just learn the ropes of growing there and also earn an income while they're learning. Knowing farm work, it might not be a full-time income, but that could be part of the transitionary process where you're like, hey, I'm going to keep this full-time job I have. It's stable. I don't love it. I'm going to start learning to grow a little bit on the side, see if I like that. And then the next jump might be, I'm going to take a year or two and just work with other farmers who know what they're doing, learn from them and have them invest into me before I start my own entrepreneurial journey. I think could be super beneficial too, because you get to look behind the curtain, you get to see some of the behind the scenes, some of the financial side, and learn to do some of the work and the growing too. So
The seasonal aspect's really interesting because it also could be applied to crops. I think one other danger is people see a Jean Martin motto or whoever, and that's what I got to do. And you're going
sure.
all year. But what if you're starting to farming was, I'm just going to crush it on sweet corn.
Yep.
Or and I'm going to make a corn maze out of it. Or I'm just
Yep.
going to grow pumpkins. And so you're learning to sell, you're learning to grow. Or you could look around crops that yield relatively quickly, blackberries or something, right?
Sure.
Strawberries. You pick. Talking to Meg, I'm blanking on her last name, who does the whole you pick farming.
Yeah, I listened to that episode. That was awesome.
Yeah, just recently talked to her again, and her season's basically November or April through July. She's really got it down to compartmentalize stuff, and if she wants to, and does other things that time of year. You don't have to farm 12 months. You don't have to have high rotation crops. You don't have to do farmers markets. What do you want to get out of farming?
Yeah.
Both from a fulfillment level as a person, and what do you need to get out income wise, and what are maybe creative ways to do that? And if you get
Hmm.
too deep into some of these models that just are hands on, it's like trying to do a Rubik's Cube while you're driving down a windy road. You can't
Yeah.
do both. So I'm either going to pull over the side and do the Rubik's Cube, or I'm going to drive down the road.
Yep.
And it's okay. I'm doing both. They're stressful. Maybe I just simplify the model in a way that generates income, maybe not as much. It builds a customer base. And then if I see momentum, I can start to
Yep.
add crops. Did you do that? I thought maybe I caught that earlier where you added like a crop each year or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. We started with tomatoes. Tomatoes was our big focus. And then when 2018, when we were ready to make a go of it, we went into the salad crops and learn to grow salad. Recently, we took on carrots, I think last year, which were still are a challenge. But yeah, so every year we pick a crop and put a focus on it. We research it, we learn it. And it's like riding a bike. Then next year we have our process down for carrots and things go hopefully smoother. Although we just had a horrible carrot germination for whatever reason. But anyway, yeah. So I love that idea that there's not a one shoe fits all to this world. You can grow a ton of different ways. Microgreens are another great example that a ton of people do as a side hustle. But what I really like is that you're getting your feet wet. You're learning this system. You're finding customers. You're meeting people. And then when you find success and you realize you really like this, then you have an opportunity to take the next step. But you can farming is something that can absolutely be molded into your lifestyle and made to really fit into how you're living your life. It doesn't have to be April to October every year. It can, like you said, you could do sweet corn. We've got some friends down the road who do sweet corn, and they do sweet corn and melons, and that's it. And when people show up here for sweet corn, we send them to them. When people show up there for tomatoes, they send them to us, and it works out awesome. But they plant the sweet corn in May or June, and they harvest like crazy for 6 weeks, and then it's done. So it's cool.
Well, that teaches you the underemphasized parts, I should say, about farming. Advertising, getting customers, relationships. Everybody wants to just grow stuff.
Yeah.
And that is tricky. Like you said, you see it with carrots and things, you're still in the learning curve. And it's not as easy as grow it and somebody will buy it. It's going to sell to. And I think that is the other vital thing that a lot of people must learn is when I'm starting this business, sure, maybe I feel confident I can grow this stuff, but where's it all going?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So looking ahead to you, 2025, Barlow Roots, what's the plan?
I wish I knew. Yeah, I think we're good. One of the things that August is like burnout month in market gardening, which my wife and I were watching some YouTube and looking at some social stuff, and everyone was talking about burnout. We looked at each other and we're like, are we supposed to be burnt out? And not to say that it's all rainbows and unicorns, but garden business just feels really good. Our customer base continues to grow. We had at our little farm stand, we had our first $1,000 day, which just blew my mind. Like if you would have told us that ever would have happened when we were shooting for $1,000 weeks a few years ago, it's just crazy. And I will give credit to my mom. She does baked goods in our farm stand several Fridays a month. And so the baked goods really do help with the bottom line. And so we're just we love where the garden is at. We love the people we're meeting in our farm stand. I think everything is great there. I am on track to keep working for sure through 2025 at my desk. It will be less work at my desk for sure. And our income is going to decrease just based on how I'm looking towards the future of my consulting. But it's going to be this gradual thing where I think we are going to put a little more pressure on the farm. We are going to try to earn a little bit more. We're going to try to spend less. We're going to try to do more so that Maybe we don't have quite as few vendor relationships that we're having to pay out. And we're going to try to find more people to sell to. It'll be a slow and steady process over 2025 where we put a little more pressure on our earning there. And I still will have some stability with earning at my desk job, but less, and there will be less coming in. So I think it's going to be a really fun year. We were speaking with a friend the other day who lost her job, and it was her whole identity was in her job. And my wife and I just had a really good conversation, and we plan to talk with our kids about that as well. It's like your identity, if your whole identity is rooted in your work and your job, you are so vulnerable to whatever the world can throw at you. And so I feel really comfortable with whatever happens with my desk job. We've built this business. We've had a ton of fun doing it. We've learned so much building the market garden business. And it might be 2026 that it's a full-time thing. I hope to use my time and my extra time in 2025 and a little capital expense to expand our earning potential, and then just really see at the end of 2025 where things stand. But I'm not quite ready to let go of a little bit of that stability where we can still earn a fair chunk of money from my desk work. But it will feel good to maybe work maybe half as much at my desk job. And then we'll just see how if the farm can make it happen.
And buy stuff from other people. It's essentially what I do. I aggregate from other people and sell it to people. Do you find a direct relationship between the more items you can aggregate and the more money your farm stand brings in? Or is that flat line? Why I ask that is there's this idea, I want to be more of a complete basket when somebody shops. And if I just sell sweet corn, somebody comes to me to get sweet corn, and I might have the best sweet corn in the world, but other people are like, I like a driveway out there because all it's sweet corn. If you got sweet corn and tomatoes and milk and steak, it's like, all right, I'm going to get a bunch. So what have you found is you've added items? Does it bring more in? Because then it's, what else can we add? It's another thing to sell. It's another thing to bring in profits, even if we are paying out a cut.
Yeah. So this is super top of mind because this has been I've been thinking a lot about this recently. Some of the items we work with vendors for right now. I've got a camera out to the farm stand, so I'm just looking at our farm stand. Honey. So we buy honey from a local guy and sell it at the stand. Awesome relationship. In fact, just today, he is mentoring our kids on bees. And so they just pulled honey off their hives today. Honey. We've got some friends who roast coffee. We're selling their coffee. They also do a cold brew concentrate that we just started selling this year, which has been an amazing seller. We've got a friend who does soaps and candles. We sell those. We've got a friend who's doing meat chickens. We do those. And then my sister-in-law grows flowers. And so we sell those at the stand. And then we've partnered with an Amish farm that's just 20 miles down the road. And they bring us kind of an assortment of vegetables that when we need them, that we also sell. So I think there's a really interesting kind of happy ground and middle ground here that you can find. And one thing you may notice is every one of those vendors probably started with friend because they're all friends of ours that we're growing with. On a vendor scale, I think almost all of them are 70-30. So they keep 70, we keep 30. In my opinion, that's a favorable relationship. That's a favorable financial situation for the vendor. I think in a lot of the cases, 60-40 or even 50-50 is more common. But those are friends of ours, and we really want to support their businesses. The thing that I've been wrestling with recently is if someone walks into our stand, whether they have a $20 bill or they have a $20 purchase in mind with their credit card, if they buy all vendor items, and they don't buy any of our items, to me, that's not necessarily a win because I'm making 30% on those vendor items. If they buy my tomatoes, they buy one of our zucchinis, they buy a bag of salad mix, and they pick up a jar of honey, that's a win. And so it's like,
because you think you get more than 30% profit
absolutely,
margin on yours.
yeah, on our stuff. Yeah. And so it's just, I am just crunching the numbers as far as how much we sell from vendors, because from the Amish farm, we've got some baby red potatoes. If someone came in with a hypothetical $20 purchase and we had no potatoes, would they buy an extra bag of tomatoes that are ours? And I think it's tricky and it's definitely fuzzy math. And I don't think there's a lot of logic around it, but it's just something I kind of sense or feel from the farm stand. And so it's just something we keep an eye on. With that said, people absolutely love the variety. And if we have more items to offer and sell, they do spend more. Yesterday, Monday, was a surprisingly down day. And it was also a day when we didn't have as much variety in the stand. We're able to look, we had more customers than we had the Monday before, but we had a 30% less average sale. So more customers, but each customer on average spent 30% less. And so in that case, I would rather have them buying vendor goods because something is better than nothing. But I just think there's this interesting tipping point. I do love the variety, but I also want to make sure they're not just buying vendor stuff. I want to make sure they're buying our stuff too, because that's what we make the most money on.
Where do you think your profit margin is on your crop?
I would have to do the math on that. I don't even know. We are pretty cheap. I think it's very high profit margin.
So
but I've never crunched that.
If you move the vendor relationship to 50-50, then it's maybe this is less of a thought.
Right. It could be.
Right. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thought. I really like that. Is a customer constrained in their head by a number that they're willing to spend? If you go in Costco, they're probably not. They're going to just buy a lot of what they want, and they're not saying, I got to be out of here with 500. Most
yeah.
Not. But at a farm stand, if they go in spending 20, are they going to impulse buy or pop 50 because there's just more stuff?
Yeah.
No, I like that thought process. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's just, I think the other parts of that math, you're right, it probably is really fuzzy. It's, do those other things somehow draw more people in? So now you're getting more customers.
Yeah.
Those other people, I come for the coffee and I get tomatoes when I'm there.
Yeah.
I come for the tomatoes. If you didn't have the coffee, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
It's a good thought. I think putting that seed into a lot of people's head works. So if I came to you and said, I have butter, cheese, cream, milk, steak, chicken, a whole bunch of stuff, and you have the space and all the freezer stuff, would you take on 10 or 15 SKUs, assuming it all aligns, the math works and all that, and now that stuff drops in your store tomorrow?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have quite a few vendors approach us, and some we've said no to. Some things just haven't sold here, which is really interesting too. And I'd have to carefully consider that. I would love to add more items, and so here's my little case study. In the early spring, our vegetable items are pretty limited. We do a lot of greens. In the early spring is also when we sell like the most candles and the most honey. And those I think are, well, honey maybe not, but soaps and candles are kind of extras. And so when we have the least amount of food is when we're selling the most amount of those extra items, which is what has led me to believe that people walk in with this number in their head that they want to spend. And I don't even know I think it's a psychological thing. I don't think they're like $10 is my number, but I just think there's like this thing around, as long as I'm here, I may as well get a candle. When we're full up the candles and the soaps sales go significantly down. And so again, it's fuzzy, but just observing and trying to figure all that stuff out. Farm stands are the coolest thing in the world. Trying to predict people is just crazy. Like I've been watching this camera as we've been talking, and it's been so slow. And usually Tuesdays are just crazy. And there's no one in there. I'm like, is my camera frozen up? So trying to predict people is just wild.
So it's not just get a ton of stuff, put it in there. There's a lot of seasonality. There's a lot of trial and error, what works, what doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's probably a whole episode in and of itself.
Yeah. And we start everyone on a consignment basis. So every vendor has to prove themselves on consignment. And then we go to a more vendor relationship just to see if things will sell. And that kind of covers our butt. So we're not left with a ton of stuff we can't sell. So
it's been awesome. A lot of great information on here, catching up with your story. You're going to keep farming, doing your thing. You have a newsletter.
Yeah.
A little bit about that, what it is, where they can go to find it.
Sure. It's called Homestead Roots. And I just really love it's a lot of what we talked about today. I talk about family. I talk about raising kids. I talk about our market garden. I talk about homesteading. And I just think it's a livelihood. When you start growing food for people, when you start growing your own food, it's a really cool way to live. And I just really loved sharing that in the newsletter, and I talked a little bit about finance. It's a number of things that are interesting to me, but people have enjoyed it. And yeah, it's called Homestead Roots. I can give you a link, but people could find it on our website, barlowroots.com, and just click on blog or newsletter there and they'll get there. So
right on. I'll also drop a link in the description below. Thanks
awesome.
again, Tony.
Yeah. Thank you, Diego.